Hi guys, it's Kathy here. I've had a few requests to make a video showing how I sew on my pages, so I'm going to go ahead and do that today. My husband has offered to be my cameraman, and we're going to hope he has mad skills and can get in there with the camera and actually show what I'm doing. So I want to show you first, I want to talk a little bit about the sewing machine that I use and a few tips on when you're sewing on paper. So I use a Pfaff Hobby 1016. This is about a 10-year-old machine. It's a very basic machine. It's got 3 straight stitches and 3 zigzag stitches. I usually use the middle zigzag stitch on the machine, and that's when I show you how I'm sewing, that's how I'm doing that and where I'm putting the presser foot and so on. So a couple things that are good to know when you're sewing on paper. I use a 7511 sewing machine needle. This is a thinner, sharper needle to go through paper than what you would use on fabric. And you want that because paper is very unforgiving. So the holes that you're making in the paper are going to be really noticeable. The thinner, sharper the needle, the smaller the hole. One thing that is pretty important with your machine while you're sewing on paper is I use a dust remover air can. And just get in here and you'll just spray it out. You can see I got some lint still in there because paper leaves a lot of fibers in your machine, and if you don't do that every so often, it can mess up your motor. So I do that after every album that I make. You don't have to do it, too often, but after every album is just kind of a good thing to clean it out. So that's that, and we will go ahead and get started here. I am working on a new album. I'm working on a new Christmas album, and I'm using the new Graphic 45 12 Days of Christmas. So this is going to be the front cover on my album. I've already got the paper on here adhered on. I use an ATG gun, and I put about 3 strips of adhesive on the back of the paper. I try not to put adhesive around the edges here, just because when you're sewing through it, it'll gunk up your needle, gunk up your machine, whatever. It's not a big deal if it happens, but I try to avoid it and minimize that. So I have my paper all the way up to the edge here. I usually leave about a 1/8 inch around the edges when I'm doing a zigzag stitch, so you got plenty of room for that stitching, and it's not going off the paper. Over here, there's not going to be any stitching. I'm only doing 3 sides on here, and that's why it's up against, this will be up against the finishing paper on the spine, so the sewing wouldn't be visible anyway. So we will go ahead and I will put this in the machine and show you how to do this. You'll want to get your presser foot. I go ahead and drop the presser foot here, and then I go ahead and I leave 2 nice long tails back here, and I go ahead and hold them, and I drop the needle down. Now I can see my needle is going straight down here, and it's right on the edge of the paper. The presser foot is right on the edge of the paper, and that's where I want to start. Now I sew really slow, especially going through paper, because there is the tendency to make some mistakes, and mistakes, try not to be afraid of them. When they happen, use them as an opportunity to embellish the page a little more. I usually will go in and put like a die cut on an area if there's been a mistake, or if the bobbin thread gets all tangled or whatever on the back. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew down this side, and then I'm going to show you at the end how I turn corners. I'm not going to try to talk over the machine, so I'll try to do this as quickly as possible. Okay, I'm nearing the end here, and what I do, and this can be a little tricky the first few times that you do it, I always want to make sure that my needle is on the paper side, not into the cardstock when I'm getting ready to turn a corner. And you want to leave a little bit of space there towards the end, so when you turn, you're hopefully lined up and your presser foot is on the edge of the paper again. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this, and I'm pretty much right on. And as the more you do it, the more you'll know when you get to that end where you need to stop. And it doesn't make that much of a difference. If you go a little bit over, you can kind of ease your needle back onto the paper again, and it's not that noticeable, and I do it all the time. So I will go ahead and I'm going to sew this side, and I'll show you the other corner. And again, I'm close enough to the end. I'm going to go ahead and hand turn this. Now you can see, well, you probably can't see this really closely. I have more of a space here to the end to the cardstock. Now I have a decision to make. If I want to go in another stitch and another stitch, I'm going to be a little bit too far off. If I don't go, if I leave it where it is and I turn the corner, I'm probably going to be going through the paper. So what I usually do is I make sure the needle is down in the paper, I raise the presser foot and I turn it. I drop that foot back down. I am way far off of the cardstock, so that tells me I'm just going to go ahead and do another stitch. So I'm going to raise the presser foot, turn it again, I'm going to hand crank the needle, whoops, not that way, hand crank the needle back into the paper side. Okay, now I know when I turn this, I'm not going to be right on that cardstock, I'm going to be off it. And I'm off by just a little bit. So I'm going to just ease that paper over. I'm going to go ahead and sew this last side. I'm going to ease that needle as I'm, or ease that presser foot to the edge of the paper again. And that's just not even going to be noticeable. Okay, and I've come to the end. So I'm going to go ahead and raise this foot up. Going to go ahead and gently, if it's going to do it, sometimes it won't, and see, it even showed you for me how it clogs on me sometimes. I'm going to go ahead and cut those tails, and I got some pretty good sized tails here. Now on this one, because there's not paper on the back and this is the front cover, I'm going to go ahead and just wrap these tails to the back, and I'm going to use a piece of tape and I'm going to tape them off to the back. And you want to do that when you're sewing on paper because the thread will tend to pull out of paper. And you don't want to be doing back stitches and stuff like that because it's gonna be messy on paper. So I've taped that down. I'll just kind of trim off the ends here, and that's not going to be visible. Now, let's say a lot of my pages I've got two-sided. I've got paper on both sides, and I'm sewing through both sides. If I had another piece of paper back here, and I can show you using these, what I'll do is pull those threads tight to one side in the least visible area possible. And I use, you can either use a glue dot or a little piece of score tape, whatever kind of adhesive, and I put it really close to, and let you know, imagine that there's another piece of paper here. I put it close to the corner there, and I go ahead and clip these tails really close to the adhesive. And then I will go and add a small die cut or sticker or other embellishment over top of that adhesive, and that's going to hold those tails down so that they don't pull out over time. So that's an important little tip there for you on that. So we've done that. You can see here that sewn all the sides of this. My front cover is now ready to go on. One thing else that I wanted to show you, now I've got a jam here that I got to clean up, and that does happen. I've lost my bobbin thread, so let me take care of that real quick. I don't want to have to thread that. There we go. Okay, now sometimes what happens when you're sewing on paper, or fabric for that matter, you'll run out of bobbin thread. And there's really no way of stopping that from happening unless you're checking your bobbin all the time. And I just don't bother with that. I'll check it after every couple of pages and see if I need to add some more, but let's just say that this has run out of bobbin thread and I've got a problem because, well, actually I should have done it and I didn't. There would be holes all the way down here and you didn't notice it. Let's say you didn't notice it for an inch or so. Okay, so what I do is I go back to where that thread, where the bobbin thread left off. I go back about 2 stitches before I drop the foot. I go ahead and I drop the needle, and I can see that it's going to be on the paper side here, and I'm going to drop it down right into that original hole. I'm going to drop the presser foot down, okay, and then I'm just going to continue sewing from there. Only about 2 stitches or so. Now when you do that, I'm going to go ahead and stop so I can talk to you about it. When you do that, I'm just jamming this up. That's going to hold your threads by going back a couple of stitches, so you're not going to have to worry about having taped them or not. So I just go ahead and clip them close, and I would do the same here. I got a real mess going on. and then you're okay. And what happens is when you're going back a couple of stitches and you've lined your presser foot up again, your needle should drop back into the original holes or very close to them, so you wouldn't really even notice that that happened. So I hope that helps with that. And there it is. And I hope that that has been helpful, and thanks for watching.